In the Surah Al-Isra, in the Holy Quran, وَقُلْ جَاءَ الْحَقُّ وَزَهَقَ الْبَاطِلُ إِنَّ الْبَاطِلَ كَانَ زَهُوقًا. Truth has arrived and falsehood perished. Falsehood is bound to perish. This is the most appropriate part of the Holy Quran. There are others, but this one is the most topically appropriate to recite and remember. Shuhada Sadaqat by. Because as the most reluctant anti-Muslim, anti-Islamic Western media are beginning to see, she is home when she embraces Islam, the kalimas, and she knows that she has reached there, arrived there after all the theological analysis and all the theological journeys. This is the logical place. She has been a Muslim all her life. And for 5 years, since the public announcement of her becoming a Muslim, she was a Muslim. So what this particular selection, the beginning to say, for example, in Canada, this English language, because Canada is mainly two European linguistic regions. One is French and the other is English. And they are saying this in the, I'll come to the heading there, the title of the web page. This is the one that I shall be talking about. This is the one, the Globe and Mail. The Globe and Mail is a Canadian English language news outlet. And they're saying that her road to Islam serves as an inspiration. It's the first time the Globe and Mail and anything like that in the West has published it. But this seems to be written by a Muslim named woman, Shima Khan. And it says published 4 hours ago. Now this is 01:06 hours GMT on 1st of August, Tuesday, the 1st of August 2023. So this is 4 hours, and her picture there dressed as a Muslim. And she was performing at August Hall in February 2020 in San Francisco, just after the COVID-19 hit the world. And Shima Khan is being described as the author of Hockey and Hijab, Reflections of a Canadian Muslim Woman. And there she is towards The end of graduate school, I embarked on a deeply personal spiritual journey, immersing myself in the study of the Quran. As a result, pop culture passed me by in the 1990s, including that era's music. So it was only last week that I first saw the music video for Nothing Compares to You, the classic song by the Irish singer. After her death at the age of 56, the footage was mesmerizing and raw, and the glistening tears she shed elicited a well of emotions from me. And that voice, words cannot do it justice. I wasn't paying attention in 1992 when she ripped up a photo of the Pope on Saturday Night Live, decrying sexual abuse in the Catholic Church. The photo had belonged to her mother, and upon her death, Miss O'Connor took it with the intent to destroy it. In revenge for the ways in which she had suffered terribly at the hands of her mother, the church and its institutions. Well, as I said, the last one broadcast, her mother raped her repeatedly. But the backlash was swift and brutal. Madonna, Frank Sinatra, and Joe Pesci denigrated her. Her albums were crushed by a steamroller at Rockefeller Plaza. Her actions were deemed a gesture of hate, etc., etc. Anyway, the paragraph I would read is this one. Her courage was breathtaking. I'm not sorry I did it. It was brilliant, she told the New York Times in 2021. Nonetheless, it was very traumatizing. It was open season on treating me like a crazy bitch. The evisceration of her musical career was a steep price to pay for being a woman who was unflinchingly ahead of her time. Throughout her life, she stood up for the dispossessed, abused women and children, gay, lesbian, and transgender people, AIDS patients, racial minorities, and Palestinians. She refused to play in Israel in 2014. She donated her Hollywood mansion to famine stricken children in Somalia. There has been an outpouring of reflection about her honest struggles with mental health and about her strength in the face of trials she endured, such as the breathtaking suicide of her son lost last year. I'll read that again because I misread that one word. Such as the heartbreaking suicide of her son last year. But some tributes have underplayed her Muslim faith. In 2018, after years of studying texts from a range of religions and leaving the Quran for last, I had brought into the nonsense that people talked about Islam. I'll read that again. I had bought into the nonsense that people talked about Islam, she admitted. She found her home in the Quran and changed her name to Shuhada Sadaqat. Umar al Umar al Qadri, chief imam at the Islamic Center in Ireland, and her spiritual advisor spoke with NPR last week about what attracted her to Islam. The fact that you can communicate with God directly, he said, as well as the confirmation of the original Torah and the Bible along with the prophets. A friend also gave her a hijab, which she donned in private, tweeting, "Not gonna post a photo because is intensely personal. I'm an ugly old hag, but I'm very, very, very happy old hag. Miss Sadaqat would appear often in public wearing the hijab, believing that a woman had the right to wear it or not. In many photos, her inner radiance, her nur in Arabic, shines through. And earlier this year became beaming from under her kafia. She dedicated her classic Irish album award to Ireland's refugee community. You are very welcome in Ireland. MashaAllah. I love you very much and I wish you happiness. In a 2021 interview with Good Morning Britain, Ms. Sadakat said that prior to converting, she would listen to the Azan, the Islamic call to prayer, and find solace in its perfection and optimism. And when she converted, Mr. Al Qadri allowed her to give the Azan in his mosque. A recording of her prayer showed women, children, and men of different races entranced, some weeping upon hearing her call. I wept too when I watched it. Upon Miss Sadaqat's death, many Muslims invoke another traditional prayer: To God we belong, and to God is our return. It is a reminder that death will visit us all. She was our sister in faith, and we, her ummah, her world community. She was a trailblazer ahead of her time, though she is gone. Her light shines on, and while I may have missed her rise to fame decades ago, I'm grateful to have learned. Even now, after she has returned to God, about her compassion, her uncompromising commitment to justice, and her humanity. Let us all do the same. Innal batila kana zahuka. Innal batila kana zahuka. This is the one that will prevail, and lies and falsehood will disappear. Lies and falsehood will disappear. Lies and falsehood will disappear. Innal batila kana zahuka. What is happening in the general news? News that is as measured by the phrase Fleet Street in the UK, the newspapers that are collectively known as Fleet Street. One of the things that the Daily Mail is going to be boasting about quite sick-makingly for a long time is the decision by the Solicitors Regulation Authority to take action against Muslim men, three Muslim men, not to be confused with anybody else, anything else. All three Muslim male solicitors are called Muhammad. The Daily Mail is going to gloat about it, and the rest of the media are going to do the same. Well, they're not going to gloat in the sense the Daily Mail is going to gloat, but let's see what the Daily Mail is doing. Well, this is a breaking kind of event because, as you can see on our profile, let's see what our profile has been reading for the last several years. So, this is the Khoodeelaar profile statement, has been there for years and years and years. Khoodeelaar, no to big business plots, fronts, Crossrail and HS2 and other corrupt plots, solidarity with all campaigns for justice, universal rights. Now, this is what we have been saying about HS2 as one of the corrupt plots, and we have been saying that scrap HS2. We have been calling for the scrapping of HS2 for a long time indeed, and I'll come to further explanation of that in a minute. So there are 11,000 entries on these words scrap HS2, and if we narrow it down to Khoodeelaar, let's see how many the search engine is acknowledging. We've got 7,570 results of Khoodeelaar saying scrap HS2. And it goes years and years back. So we have been saying it for years, decade, more than a decade. So the Daily Mail today is waking up. So this is the update. It's Daily Mail 3 hours ago. It's time for Rishi Sunak to admit HS2 fiasco has reached the end of the line. And this is Nadine Dorries. Of course, she is not doing this as an original. She is following the publication of the report, which I shall refer to later. It's time for Rishi to admit the HS2 fiasco has reached the end of the line, writes Nadine Dorries. If Keir Starmer wants to swing the polls decisively to Labour side, then one thing would surely do it: a quick and unequivocal announcement that he would scrap HS2 the instant he became Prime Minister. Such a move, which I dare say Starmer lacks the courage to make, would be devastating for the Tories. I doubt anything Rishi Sunak could say or do could reverse its impact. The planned high speed rail link cuts straight through several constituencies in the conservative heartlands. Voters hate the disruption it's causing and see no corresponding benefit to their local areas. HS2's toxic impact on Tory fortunes was made clear at the 2021 by election in the previously safe Conservative seat of Chesham and Amersham. This had been vacated because of the untimely death of Cheryl Gillan, MP, a brave soul who had campaigned relentlessly against the project. The constituency swung in a shock result to the Lib Dems. Sunak can expect more of the same at the general election next year. The fact is that the case for HS2 was always weak and is getting weaker by the day. As the Mail reported yesterday, the government's own watchdog, this is the one that has reported, the Infrastructure and Projects Authority, has just branded the link unachievable, and rightly so. I'm reminded of the last physical meeting I held as a health minister just before COVID hit. The person I was meeting had left his Manchester home early that morning. It took him half a day to get to me using a mainline train and then a taxi. We met for 45 minutes and then he repeated the same journey in reverse. Would he benefit from HS2 in future? No. Since the pandemic, both of us would know that a call on Microsoft Teams or Zoom would be cheaper and more efficient. The face to face meeting simply wouldn't happen. The bill for HS2 has soared from a predicted 33 billion to almost 100 billion, while the first leg from London to Crewe was meant to open in 2026, but is now expected to be as late as 2033. We were sold a vision of trains traveling at up to 248 miles per hour. But the average speed on HS2 is now predicted to be just 205 miles per hour, only 80 miles per hour faster than a typical machine train. I'll read that again. Only 80 miles per hour faster than a typical mainline train, and at a cost of untold billions. Gone too is all talk of linking HS2 to the continent or the Eurostar network, let alone Heathrow. The trains will instead stop at Old Oak Common, out in the stocks of northwest London. They won't reach the main Euston terminus until 2041, if at all. To put it simply, the world has moved on since HS2 was first mooted. It would be a far better use of public money to invest in a proper east west rail link than simply to shave a few minutes of a London to Birmingham train journey, a time saving immediately cancelled by having to travel across London. Frankly, I have my doubts this project will ever be finished. But if it is, it will have bled the taxpayer dry, destroyed countless livelihoods, and ripped the country in half for almost no discernible benefit. In 2012, I raised my objections to HS2 with George Osborne in the House of Commons, urging greater investment in regional transport network instead of the costly white elephant. The following year, I warned again in Parliament about the rising costs. I take no pleasure in saying now I was right both times. Many of my fellow MPs remain baffled why the government is still throwing so much good taxpayers' money after bad. Boris Johnson and I saw eye to eye on many things, but not on HS2. I shared the former Prime Minister's fondness for big infrastructure projects, but I think the case for this railway link has always been grossly overstated and is now unjustifiable. The only beneficiaries, of course, have been the armies of highly paid executives. A few weeks ago, Mark Thurston announced that he plans to stand down as CEO of HS2, having spent over 6 years in a role he unsurprisingly described as the highlight of my career. Thurston presided over soaring costs and endless delays, for which he was paid a ludicrous taxpayer funded package of more than £620,000 last year, about four times as much as the Prime Minister himself. Investment in infrastructure is essential, but it has to be on the right projects and for the right reasons. HS2 has reached the end of the line. Sunak needs to admit this, or he will face the same fate. All right, going back to the campaign that we started against Crossrail Whole. Remember, the campaign against the Crossrail Whole was the campaign against Crossrail Whole. We never underestimated the need for the London wide various transport networks that are in need and have been in need of overhaul, maintenance, repairs, etc. Because the creation of one single particular rail line, overground or underground, does nothing to actually address the issue of the need for safe and reliable and healthy transport network right across London. Billions and billions and billions and billions of trips are made, hours are spent in traveling across the country. But the importance they place on big projects like HS2 takes away the attention from the 99% of the existing infrastructure that needs repairing, refurbishing, and making safe, because many of these structures are collapsing or will collapse, and there will be disaster. Sooner or later, there will be disaster on the underground, because London underground system is very overdue for repair across the board, and this is not being mentioned at all, let alone being addressed. And the reason why projects like HS2 keep being promoted is nothing to do with the actual needs of the people for safe transport. It is the contractors that actually know that ordinary government ministers, members of parliament, and ordinary people are too lazy to actually think about the details of the waste of projects like this, because this I mean, Nadim Naris says 100 billion. It's not 100 billion, it's much more than 100 billions. It will be 200 billions by the time it is finished if it is allowed to continue. These contractors pocket the money, and the contractors have got a very obscene, unhealthy, close relationship with the Department for Transport, the central government department. So they share the loot, and the environment is destroyed, and the money is wasted. The money is pilfered and looted. So we said that we told you so. So HS2 must be scrapped. And even William Hague is saying, well, he's saying this after the report of the so called government authority. He's saying HS2 has gone from shambles to red alert. This is what he's saying in his column on the Times on Tuesday. And based on the same report, an outlet called The Planner is running this story. Infrastructure watchdog brands HS2 as unachievable. And railway technology runs it as HS2 given unachievable rating by government authority. And the Ealing Times says first mile of HS2 Northolt Tunnel complete after 9 months. HS2 tunneling in London reaches first milestone, literally first mile. And this is, of course, also echoed the report by the government watchdog, so called, in the Rail Technology magazine. In the Rail Technology magazine, it's HS2 currently unachievable according to government watchdog. The HS2 rail link has been given an unachievable rating by the Infrastructure and Projects Authority, IPA, the government's independent watchdog for major infrastructure projects. IPA annual report on major projects gave the first two phases of HS2 from London to Birmingham and from Birmingham to Crewe a red rating. This means that the project is at risk of not being delivered on time, within budget, or to the required quality. And the fact that the HS2, despite the admission by this authority and others, whoever has been paying attention to the actual issues raised by HS2, have all found faults with the project. And despite all of that study, the unviable, wasteful project keeps getting public funding when millions of people are in poverty, shows the lack of absence of any accountability, any transparency, and audit in the United Kingdom. This applies to HS2, this applies to Crossrail, and the only way that the Crossrail plot against bricklaying was dropped and defeated was because of the campaign that I organized. Without the campaign, they would have done it because on the local council, regardless of what party political kind of affiliations, all the councillors on the local council, Tower Hamlets Council, in the context of Brick Lane and the Crossrail Hole plot threat against Brick Lane, they're completely silent, as is the case with the current merger plot. The plot to merge the existing Tower Hamlets community housing stock with the gang of crooks called Popla Harka. There is complete silence. The silence on the part of the so called residents, the tenants on the THCH properties. It's not silence, it's a kind of it's a, worse than political and social and intellectual death on the part of these people. There is no difference between the political death of these people in relation to the looming merger of the THC council properties with the Popla Harkar gangsters, with the silence that they maintained during the first 10 years of this decade when Popla Harka and THCH were effectively given the council housing stock. There was no movement, there was no campaign against these by the people who lived in the properties. I didn't take part in any opposition because to organize the people to oppose the Harka and THCH creations, robberies and thuggeries would take up more time and resource and energy than I had available because I was concentrating all my time and energy and resources during the first decade to stopping the crossrail hole. And it is the case now. Nobody is saying anything. Even the people who claim to have no support for the merger plot for the THCH housing stock with the Popla Harka crooks, even those who claim to be opposed to those are sleeping. There is this piece in the Daily Mail, which is on the inside page, future of HS2 in turmoil, as Watchdog calls it, unachievable. And there is this woman who gets £300,000 while she works from home and uses aeroplanes rather than using the train. That is grotesque scandal and criminality in the United Kingdom. Now, the evening No Standard has got a so called survey report. 76% say Britain is worst place to live as taxes and NHS crisis waits crisis waits take toll. And this is the headline that can be contrasted with the mental slave Trevor Terrible Phillips, who praised that Britain was the best place or a better place to live in than any other place in the world and in Europe. So there is this piece about the Solicitors Regulation Authority. I'm just looking for the should be talking about the Solicitors Regulation Authority in the context of the Daily Mail investigation into immigration lawyers in an essay length series. And we shall include in our analysis, world exclusive analysis, the evidence of the criminality of this solicitor called Anya Bloom. Anya Bloom is one of the criminals and liars that should not be allowed to practice as licensed law traders. We shall be doing this later in the week. For now, we are ending this particular edition, which is '54 55 minutes long, let's say, by the time we finish this at 57 hours GMT on Tuesday, the 1st of August 2023.